this movie that I wrote last year. It's a psychedelic comedy set at a music festival. I like to say it's super bad at Burning Man. I grew up going to Grateful Dead shows with a hippie mom, and I was running around with a tie-dye shirt and no pants on. And today at music festivals, I do pretty much the same thing. The project is very much a love letter to that community. It's an homage to that world, that electronic music loving, live music, acoustic loving community that's driven by tenets of mindfulness and joy and curiosity.
Welcome, tribe. I'm Maya Rose.
And I'm Gerald Rogers. We're about to embark on another mind-expanding episode where we dive deep into the realms of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
This is a transformational experience of healing, manifestation, increased clarity, flow, and alignment.
So join us on this sacred journey as we receive the codes of transformation from scientists and psychonauts, shamans, tantra masters, mystics, and more.
Together, we'll unravel the secrets of plant medicine, sex magic, and other tools to tap into higher states of consciousness.
So why are we here? To answer the call, to share our passions and be advocates for alternative healing.
So get ready for a ride that transcends the ordinary and leads you to the extraordinary, because living a legendary life is not just a choice.
It's a sacred adventure. All right, we are back with Psychedelic Sex and the Superconscious, and I am so excited to be here with my soul brother, Brent Pella, who is very funny, and I'm just so thrilled and excited to be here with you. I always love just beginning with a little bit of the backstory, and I was thinking about how it's sometimes funny when someone asks you, like tell me your story. I'm curious to hear what you say, because every time someone asks me that, it's a different story, but sometimes I'm like, well,
I know. It's like, where do you start? Do I start on my birthday? Do I start on my mom's birthday? Do I start when my great grandma came from Italy? Do I start when my ancestor was a monkey and ate a mushroom off a pile of cow shit? Like, do I start at the Big Bang? I just don't know. Was the Big Bang real? And next thing I know, I'm having an existential crisis and I need to take a nap.
So one of my favorite ways to start is just like, well, the first thing I remember is like I was like in this big crowd and we were swimming and I was swimming so fast and there was this great big ball in front of me and I won. That's my very first memory. And people never know how to take that, or when people ask me, it's like, hey, where are you from? It's like, well, I'm from Mildred's vagina. That always makes people super awkward. So
are we not all from the stars?
So I'm excited to hear your story and like what was the origin story of Brent Pella?
Yeah, man. So I grew up in Davis, California, bounced around a little bit when I was young, a couple years in Humboldt, a couple years in Seattle, but mostly Davis. Went to high school in Davis, California, raised by a single mom. She was a bit of a deadhead, so she brought me to a lot of Grateful Dead shows and music festivals when I was a baby, which has clearly informed a lot of what I do and who I am today. Went to college at UC Santa Cruz for 2 years, played basketball, then transferred to UC Santa Barbara, where I switched into the film program, started getting into production, made a couple of fun comedy videos in college in line with like what Andy Samberg and The Lonely Island were doing at the time. And also grown up with a single mom, she was younger. She had me a lot younger. So we were kind of like friends first, mother, son second. Like we were homies. So we would watch Saturday Night Live, Chris Farley movies. She definitely got me into kind of her taste in comedy very early on. And then in college, did some comedy video stuff, got into film, and then moved to LA after college, got a day job at the Cheesecake Factory where I would write stand-up jokes on the back of receipt paper by day, and then I would go to open mics and perform those receipt paper jokes by night, and kind of had quite a few years of really good development in Los Angeles in stand-up, sketch, improv comedy. Continued making videos, tried to get better at that. I was also a production assistant in Los Angeles at the time, so I was running around on sets, getting people coffee and throwing away trash and trying to absorb as much as I could knowledge-wise. And and everything just kind of kept building from there, but now living in Austin after being in LA the past 10 plus years has been a really cool shift. And, constantly just trying to evolve what I do and make it better and try to figure out a way to kind of keep people happy before the world ends, you know?
It's important. Like the medicine of laughter is, it's like really, it's really incredible. And in fact, like one of the things we do at some of our events is laughter yoga, which
Oh,
is
cool. Yeah,
hilarious. Like it's like amazing to take this group of like, 100 like serious entrepreneurs and like throw them on the floor and have them laugh
totally.
for an hour hysterically without any reason. But there's so much science about like the health benefits of laughter and what it does for our nervous system, what it does to heal trauma, what it does to like, restore, like the somatic movement of energy in our body. It's like really important medicine in the world. So
Totally.
good for you.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
I'm curious, as you kind of look back at your life, take us to a moment that you're like proud of. Like what's something you're really proud of from your life, something you've done or something you've accomplished?
Yeah. Couple things stand out. You know, when I got cast on Wild and Out, it's the sketch improv comedy show hosted by Nick Cannon on MTV. I did 5 seasons on that show, and to get on that show was a multi-year process of attempts. I during COVID I kind of tripled down on video content because I wasn't able to tour for quite a while, and that kind of committed effort toward growing my audience and getting better at video production directly led to Nick Cannon actually seeing my work and casting me on the show. And that was my first kind of bigger TV opportunity. That was pretty much entirely self-made, you know. So that was a real proud moment, I think, for me. And then other moments that stand out are at Burning Man last year, getting completely lost and then navigating back to our camp. Felt like one of the biggest challenges I've ever had to face in my entire life. And I am immensely proud of myself.
I do want to acknowledge you for that. Like I
Thank
feel
you.
like the whole like universe like celebrating, anytime that happens.
I deserve it. Honestly, it's one of the biggest challenges and hurdles I've ever had to cross over to get to where I'm at, literally. And that was a big accomplishment as well. Yeah. You know, my grandfather, quick aside related to proud moments. My grandfather is like the best male role model I've ever had. He's just the best man to ever live, in my opinion. I love him so much, and he's great. And I asked him that same question once years ago when we were cruising around Rhode Island. I have a big Italian East Coast family, and I was driving around, you know, where he grew up years ago in Rhode Island, and I asked him, after all the decades of life that you've had and all the things you've done, what's like one of the most proudest moments you've ever had? What is one of the biggest accomplishments? And he told this story about how a coworker of his accomplished something. He was a chemist, and this government it was like a really cool advancement of science thing for education. And he was working in this lab, and not a COVID lab. He was not working in Wuhan. But he told this story, and he said his proudest moment was somebody else's accomplishment, which I thought spoke a lot to his character. So now when I think of my proudest moment, I only talk about myself, but I hope one day I can have the humility to acknowledge somebody else the way
You
he
just
did.
need to meet someone you're proud of.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're coming somewhere in the future.
totally.
That's fun. Tell me, like, obviously the show Psychedelic Sex and the Superconscious is all about the journey of accessing the higher mind and like really, this wild time that we're in right now, and how psychedelic medicines are informing, so much of culture and in our future. And it's like a really exciting time, but also like very disorienting for a lot of people. I would love to hear your experience. Like tell us, when did your journey first begin with psychedelics, and like, how has it informed your path?
Yeah, I didn't smoke weed until I was 18. I was always too scared because I played basketball my whole life, and I thought my lungs would get messed up. And also my mom, after smoking weed for a majority of her life, just totally warned me against it. So I was always a little hesitant. So I didn't smoke weed till I was 18, and then very sporadically, very, very rarely then after. Today, maybe once or twice a week. But the first bigger experience was about 9 years ago when I did LSD for the first time with my buddy at a music festival. It was Lightning in a Bottle back at their old location, for those who remember. And it was like a totally transformative experience, you know, especially in that setting, being in kind of the very first opening chapter of my own creative journey in comedy and film and writing and performing and producing. And I remember the night we did LSD, just laughing the hardest I've ever laughed, even to date. It was like I was just fucking sobbing with laughter. I hurt, my body hurt. And then that would make me laugh more because I thought it was so ridiculous that this happy activity of laughing was actually causing me pain. And oh my God, the irony of that. And it just sent me through this other spiral. And my buddy was like complaining because they played the cleanup song after the headline DJ was done. He was complaining because he didn't want to touch other people's trash, but also it would be bad karma to not touch other people's trash. And he was muttering to himself, going back and forth, walking around, picking up trash with his sleeves over his fingers. I just thought it was so fucking hysterical. And we went on this whole journey throughout the night. And, you know, at a festival, there's a million little side experiences and characters and people dressed as all types of things and animals walking around. And I was just so overwhelmed with sensation in the best way because it was such a creative environment. I never knew what was going to happen next at every turn that we took. And I remember that just being very like creatively opening for me, that experience. And, you know, psychedelic, even the word psychedelic, I might get this wrong, but I'll try to remember. It's broken into two parts. It's Latin. The first part, psyche, meaning mind or of the mind. And the second part, delic, coming from the Latin delios, I think, which is like manifestation or to create, to manifest. So psychedelic means a manifestation of the mind, to create something new in your mind, right? And that's what was happening. Like everywhere we went that night, and even today, in bigger journeys or bigger experiences, I find that I'm kind of like experiencing a different reality within my mind that's projected outward, and that just totally fuels my creative capacity. So post experience, I'm more creative. I'm a bit more open. You know, my creative channel is a bit more open. I'm writing more fluidly, and it's so working with psychedelics has totally fueled my creative process in that way, because I have a lot less hesitancy when I write now. So I'll write just weird, random, crazy shit, and I'll try to go too far and then kind of pull it back into something that makes sense or can be produced and watched. And so working with psychedelics have made a huge impact on my life creatively. And then also personally, you know, I've battled, as many have, with various forms of mental obstacles, hesitations, anxieties, stresses, imposter syndromes, self-doubt, toxic comparisons. And what's helped me in that regard is actually microdosing psilocybin, which I started doing about 8 years ago, off and on. And today I don't have a strict program, but I microdose occasionally, maybe for a couple of days in a row, maybe a day or two here and there, whenever I feel like I can purposefully use the psilocybin for the purpose of like kind of creating new ways of navigating thought patterns. And from a personal perspective, that's how psychedelics have really affected my life in a positive way, because microdosing psilocybin for me has allowed me to kind of explore different ways of approaching these negative thought patterns and different ways of navigating through those challenging thought patterns in order to create a healthier kind of baseline.
Yeah, I love hearing your story, and I think it's so interesting, like the perception that we have of psychedelics and drugs or whatever, like growing up, and for me, LSD was one where, man, I was like programmed with so much judgment around that, and
Totally,
you know, and like all the Nancy Reagan commercials. This is your brain. This is your brain drugs,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Then hearing stories about people jumping out windows. That's what I thought people did on LSD. They
Right.
just jumped off high buildings. Like that's what I'll never do that. And so
Right.
I didn't actually experience it for the first time until like 3 years ago at Burning Man. That was my first time actually.
Oh, wow. What was that experience like for you?
Oh my gosh. It was, the way that I describe LSD, it's just like turning up the volume, of life, or the magic, the music, the sound, the energy is like it just like moves through you. So you're just more connected to everything. And so we had a group of people, we dropped in after dinner, and we call it the best night of our life. And so every year we have this annual tradition of like one night's our LSD night, and we just like ride it. But I'll never forget it. Like there was like probably 6 or 7 of us, and we were just like having so much fun dancing and moving, exploring art, and just being in like the pure wonderment and joy of life. And one of my friends, he's part of the Australian military. He was like equivalent to like Delta Force, like the highest, like there's like the Navy SEALs, and then above that, like the most intense. And so he was in the equivalent of that in the Australian army. And it's just like really just outrageous badass. But this is his first time doing LSD, and he is just laughing. And there's a moment where he turns to us. He's like, I am never not doing LSD again.
Hell yeah, he was in it.
He was like, I'm going for it. And sure enough, every year at Burning Man, he fucking goes for it. But it's like this,
awesome.
It was like this, like deeply connecting and like our heart opening and playful and energizing. And we just rode it all night long, finding one little pocket of miracles to the next, and ending up at Robohard watching the sunrise, and just like thinking, oh my God, like this is like one of the best moments of my life. And
totally.
And I think it's like really, it's meaningful to not like rely on psychedelics for that, but to help us tune in to like being able to like really feel and witness and appreciate the magic. And so I don't do like LSD too often, maybe like 3 or 4 times a year, but like it is the best like love making. Like like when we drop in with LSD and MDMA, like my woman is like, she has like a 9-hour orgasm. It's like it's the best.
That's the recipe.
It's such a good recipe. And actually, speaking of that, like for my birthday this last year, I wanted to like, people like typically will, talk about doing a psilocybin journey or ayahuasca ceremony or all these different things. But for my birthday, I just needed cathartic laughing. I just needed laughing. So we had friends together for a sacred LSD ceremony. and we're like, my friend was like, what's your intention for this? Well, my intention is joy and love. We did LSD and MDMA is like, well, that's the recipe.
That's joy and love.
That is it. But then I had everyone like bring their favorite like Instagram reels or something, the funniest things like they could find that they've stored. And so we all sat around the TV and just like took turns like watching everyone's like favorite reels.
That's insane.
We just laughed until our sides hurt, and it was, oh God, it was so good.
That's a great playlist. I hope you saved the video playlist. That could be used again for sure.
Yeah, it was so good. it was such a beautiful experience. Especially for someone like you who is like always looking for these different angles to like view humanity, or like to elucidate like these weird idiosyncronicities of humankind. It's like really such a great way to just get a different perspective and open up those new neural pathways and just to see the world differently. I think that's awesome.
Totally. Yeah. And it's connected me to such a great community, and it's opened also a lot of opportunities, not just opportunities for me, but opportunities for me to support other initiatives. Like, I started experimenting and working with different substances, and then I learned about the MAPS organization years ago, and now I work on and off with them to make content or tap in about upcoming projects. And also this organization, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. I got introduced to them. It's an incredible mission to raise money for veterans with PTSD to go overseas for psychedelic assisted therapy that they can't really get in the US. And they're doing amazing work. And I didn't really know about these movements and the psychedelic movement in general, but also these smaller kind of adjacent movements until I got a bit more into the space that just totally resonated with me. And it was like an obvious fuck yes to try and help and be of value to initiatives like that. So it's definitely been, life-changing in multiple ways.
Yeah, that's amazing. Tell us what you're working on right now. I know when we were together, you were sharing a little bit about this movie you're creating. Like,
Yeah,
give us a little sneak peek into that.
totally. Yeah. So, the past 10 plus years of doing video work online has really been with the intention of growing an audience and building a foundation that I can evolve from into the bigger TV and film space. And my background is in production. So I've written, produced, and directed a handful of TV commercials through my production company, and done quite a few branded content campaigns and built marketing campaigns and content for different businesses. And the goal has always been to push bigger projects forward with more lasting power and bigger cultural impact. So this movie that I wrote last year is it's a psychedelic comedy set at a music festival. I like to say it's super bad at Burning Man. I can't reveal the title or much specific info, but we are in fundraising mode right now, and we've raised about half the budget. We're looking to raise the other half to shoot next spring. And it's like the dream project for me, man. I grew up going to Grateful Dead shows with a hippie mom, and I was running around with a tie-dye shirt and no pants on. And today at music festivals, I do pretty much the same thing. And I'm bringing my mom to Burning Man next year in 2026. So she's going to get to experience that, which is rad. But the project is very much a love letter to that community. It's an homage to that world, that electronic music loving, live music, acoustic loving community that's driven by tenets of mindfulness and joy and curiosity. And so I'm aiming to really craft this love letter of a film for that community within the container of high energy R-rated comedy like Pineapple Express, Superbad, The Hangover, set at a place like a Burning Man or a Lightning in a Bottle. So yeah, I'm very excited about it and super stoked on it. Yeah.
My gosh, I'm so excited about that too. I'm sending you all the positive juju and all the abundance to make this an epic journey that we can all participate in with you. That's
yeah, it's definitely a communal effort for sure. We've got a pretty rad, recognizable art car from the burn that's committed that I think everybody's going to be stoked to see. I don't want to give it away just yet. We've got quite a few well-known DJs and musicians that are fairly big names and definitely recognizable that are going to be contributing to the score and the soundtrack, and they're all on board. And then, hope the goal is to partner with a festival. We've got one we could partner with just outside of LA, and another one that we could potentially partner with in Texas. So the debate now is, do we shoot in California or Texas? And there's a lot more that goes into that decision-making process. But the communal effort that's going to go into this project is really going to be what makes it a success. I'm hoping that we get a lot of people out for the shoot to be like festival goers, festival attendees. I'm hoping we can link with different Burning Man camps or vendors or clothing companies, and anything that you would see at a festival, we will be looking to source and use in the film. And I think the love is going to come through because of how much love we're aiming to give to the people that we're representing.
It's amazing. Count me in and
cool.
And our camp and our tribe. I've always had it on my bucket list to be a extra in the.
You got to be there. You got to be there.
I'm
next spring, April or May. I'm not sure which yet, but next spring for sure.
I'll bring a whole bunch of different costumes and wigs and stuff. So I'll be.
Yeah, we'll get you
back and forth in the background.
10 different characters. Yeah.
That's actually the fun thing about a festival thing is that you can wear endless things and you actually don't know it's the same person.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's like a fresh experience every day.
So when you go to Burning Man, one of the things I love about Burning Man is just it's a place to just play with our own avatar, our own character that we bring to the planet. And I think that's one of the most healing aspects of it is this idea of radical self-expression gives, people space to be someone different than who they are
Yeah.
on a daily basis. I'm curious for you what that has looked like. How is being in that environment? How have you personally played with your own identity, or like what have you witnessed in that space?
Totally. Yeah. I think the festival space is super interesting. And I know the OGs out there will say Burning Man's not a festival, but it counts as being part of the space. So forgive me. I think that environment it offers a lot. First and foremost, everything is heightened in that world. Emotions are heightened, experiences are heightened. From like small little nitpicky arguments, those might tend to turn into fights between couples. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it. And also like the joys, small little joys are just massively huge and bigger than you could have expected. And I think it amplifies everything in a really beautiful way, which encourages the most authentic version of yourself to come through. For me personally, every time I go back out into the festival world each year, I notice these internal shifts. I'm more experienced. I'm more self-reliant. I know more people. My community has grown, so I'm more comfortable in the space. And there's always a new kind of curiosity that comes with that, because every year at a Lightning in a Bottle or a Burning Man, there seems to be some new theme to the experience for me. And I leave and then I look back months later and I reflect and think to myself, wow, that was the year, we made all these new friends and we had such weird experiences with all these new people. Or that was the year we had our fucking soul tribe. We were with these best friends, this group of 7 of us. We're biking around every single night. That was incredible. We couldn't leave each other's side. Or, yeah, that was the year Natalie cried in a tent for 2 hours because the acid wasn't going down and she thought she was going to stay stuck like that. What a crazy year. and it's always like a completely different experience, which I think is really beautiful. And that invite what for me, knowing that every year comes as a massive amplification of energy and experience, and also comes with a different theme, and it's unpredictable what that theme is going to be and what types of experiences you're going to have within that container. It encourages limited expectations. So it's really a practice in going out into that world with no expectations, with intentions, but not having an expectation to, accomplish this or see this person or do this thing, whatever that might be for people out there. And that's part of the psychedelic experience, right? You enter a ceremony experience, you have intention, you don't have expectation. And so that pattern is kind of mirrored in the transformational or music festival space. And that pattern can be mirrored into everyday life, and you move through. I tend to move through life now after having a decade of experiences like this, going into situations in my career or business or work life or friendships with intentions, but not expectations. And I think that's been one of the biggest shifts for me from having these types of experiences over the years.
I think that's so huge. I love how you say that, embracing intentions rather than expectations. And I think it's such a valuable life skill, is just like learning to like really be in the mystery,
Yeah,
being in the unknown, and really, having a vision for what we want to create, but being in the surrender to the universe and allowing it to lead us, to where we really need to be. And, for me, like every year Burning Man is that same thing. Even holding a camp is like interesting because there's a lot of like logistical structure that I need to plan and prepare for and like be precise about. But then the experience to allow the dance with the playa to be brand new every year and to not have an agenda for what that's supposed to be like. But I love how that's led me to like some of the most weird and fantastic and wonderful, experiences.
Yeah.
I would love to hear some of the weird portals you've been. I just remember the first year Maya Rose and I went, and it was like this. We were like brand new. We didn't really know what to expect, and so we were just like riding around on our bicycles, just wide eyed, and our jaws were dropped. We're like, "What is this place?" And we'd find ourselves in one moment in like this really deep meditative, like yogic experience, like really like, and then the next moment, like we'd find ourselves a couple weird things, and I love like looking back to like these little glimpses, like, but we found this camp that they just had a mural of mermaids, like a bunch of, like, it's a big mural of mermaids, but then you'd stand about like 10 feet apart and they'd have like these big buckets of dildos with suction cups on them. Just like throw the dildos, like, and stick the suction cup.
That's insane.
Right. And I'm like, that was their offering. That was what they wanted to create. And then there was this other moment where Maya Rosa and I found ourselves, we're in this like little dome with like 20 other couples, and it was like naked partner acro yoga. So we're all like buck ass naked doing like partner yoga, all these acro moves. And there was this one particular moment where we were standing back to back, like butt cheeks to butt cheeks, like bent over, and we're reaching between our legs and grabbing the other person. And I'm looking around at all of these other couples that are doing this. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how did we get here? And we just started laughing. It was like the most weird and wonderful and bizarre like scenario.
Totally.
Like the type of thing you don't plan when you wake up. It's like, what's on my list of things to do? It's like, well, I want
right.
It's like these like weird little portals that are all over the place. I'm so curious to hear like some like the little fantastic and weird things that you.
Yeah, dude. I hope I find the naked acro yoga at the Burn this year. I would love to experience that. Yeah, we've had quite a few appropriate to talk about publicly. Let's see. At Lighting in a Bottle a couple years ago, my girlfriend Natalie and I took LSD, and it was way too much for her. Looking back, we learned to wait a little bit more than an hour before re-upping.
This is a great key. It's just for anyone. Just start small and wait at least 2 hours before you know if it's working or not.
You can always do more. You cannot do less.
Yeah, but wait, it's probably working more than you think it will. Just give it some
right. So we did LSD, and it started to peak when we were watching Ellis Dream play an incredible set, and he had these super trippy Alice in Wonderland visuals behind him on the LED screen, and we were just bug-eyed, like it was nuts. It was so stereotypical cliche LSD peak, and we walked away, and it was rising. It kept rising more and more, and she started getting nervous, and then a dust storm hit, so we got caught in that, and that was like not a great vibe. So we ran into this art gallery where no one was. It was a tiny little like yurt with a bunch of paintings on the inside and a bunch of yoga mats on the ground, and no one was in there. So we decided to like seek shelter for a little bit. And we were looking around at the paintings, and some of them were like kind of creepy. There was like a dark one with like a baby, and the baby was holding a knife or something. And then there was another one that was just like black swirls, where I was like, oh, don't look at that one. Okay, don't look at that one either. No, don't look at that one. And then I turned my head and I saw this super trippy painting of Mr. Rogers. And it was like geometric fractals all around him. And he had 8 arms, like a Buddhist god or an Indian god. I'm not familiar, but one of those gods with a bunch of arms. And it was Mr. Rogers. And he's smiling and he's looking all happy. And I was like, ooh, look at that one. That one's a good one. That's a good vibe right there. Look at that one. And she looked over, she was doing breathing exercises and like trying to really like calm down and relax. We looked over at the Mr. Rogers painting, and it really like chilled us out. And we started to kind of even out over the course of a couple hours. Went to go get spiral fries at the French fry vendor because we were hungry, and LSD is weird. You want to kind of, I want to kind of snack on LSD at a certain point. I get a little snacky, but I get snacky for like weird stuff. So we went over to the spiral fry place. We got spiral fries. And hanging on the wall behind the spiral fry vendor was a print of that Mr. Rogers image. And it was just this really cool like synchronicity of Mr. Rogers just kind of caring for us throughout the night and being
Mr. Rogers with all
our
of his
protector.
arms. I've got
Yeah.
you. I've got
Yeah. And then, so that was fun. Another one a couple years back at Lighting in a Bottle, we stumbled into this super trippy secret back room. It looked like just wooden panels that were lining a walking path, but there was a little opening, doorway sized, and people were walking out of it. And we were like, hey, what's back there? And they just looked at us and they were like, oh, dude, just get in there. Just go. And we said, oh, okay. So we walked through this trippy wooden portal thing that was just a bunch of wood, scaffolding, and debris. And we walked into a jazz club, like a legitimate jazz club.
Wow.
With a full 4-piece band on stage, a bartender that was serving lukewarm Shasta. You remember Shasta soda?
Yeah, for
the
sure.
only thing they were serving were shots of lukewarm Shasta. and the sign said, shots of Shasta, $1, parentheses, or free. And it was just like, it kept like everywhere we turned, we just were having our brains broken. There was a janitor, who was sweeping the floor next to people's feet. There's nothing to sweep, but this guy's walking around the whole time with his head down, just sweeping the floor everywhere, just sweep it nonstop. And the guy on stage, the leader of the band, was doing a spelling bee with the audience while the band played, and he would give people words to spell that were like fake words, like triggy-lalali, and somebody would have to spell it, and everybody got the word correct no matter how you spelled it. And it was just the trippiest. But that to me is like an essence of a psychedelic experience. It's breaking your brain. You've manifested this new reality that you're in, and it's an unpredictable experience, and it's breaking your habitual kind of patterns of expectation of what a jazz club should be, what a bar should be, what a live experience should be. And it was just hilarious. And so stuff like that is constantly inspiring to me, and creatively inspiring, and just so unbelievably silly and fun to experience.
Yeah, it's super interesting you say that, because I'm like really considering like the ways that like improv comedy and psychedelic journey and then just life in general like mirror like these different principles and stuff. Like for instance, like in improv comedy, I know there's like this principle called yes and, right? Rather than like creating an abrupt stop, it's like no, like trying to change direction, you'd say like with a random scenario is like yes and then you adjust and flow with that. And I really feel like that's one of the secrets to like having great trips all the time, you know, like to like just be in the embracing of it, and then like just the curiosity and the flow, and like being in the space, rather than the people who I know have the hardest psychedelic experiences are the people that are the control freaks that want to like stay in control the whole time.
Yeah. You really got to submit and allow if you want to have the best experience in my experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we've led, psychedelic journeys at our retreats for the last like 6 years and stuff, and they're always incredibly magical, really powerful. There were a couple times though that there would be some participants that would like go into like this really dark, like challenging space, and it was like on like too much psilocybin, and it was just like they just didn't know how to process it, which in its own way was good for them, that they ended up, recalibrating and having some big breakthroughs. But I always noticed it was people with like trauma and control issues. They were like, they didn't know how to surrender to their body. They didn't know how to like be in the experience. They wanted to like try to like micromanage what this psilocybin was doing. And that's a recipe for a lot of,
Totally. That's how you practice the toxic habits that you're probably taking the substance to help navigate through, right?
When we can be in that yes and energy and just that playful curiosity and that wonder, I mean, just in life in general, like we can do that, then it's like almost everything has its like purpose in medicine, and there's like wonder and magic and just about everything. And And it's always interesting how life will lead us to where we actually really need to be rather than where we think we want to be.
Totally.
I love that. Of the festival experiences you've been to, like this is like really fun for me, like digging. I've actually never been to anything except for Burning Man. Like Burning Man.
Oh, right on. Cool.
So I
Yeah.
I haven't been to Lightning in the Bottle or Electric Forest or, you know, all these other ones. I'm curious to get your like glimpse into like the different flavors and what you like about each one.
Totally. Yeah. There are kind of three categories, in my opinion, of the festival experience. Neither is better or worse than the other. They're just different. And some people prefer one over the other, and that's totally cool. One is kind of the more mainstream-esque festivals. That'd be like EDC, Ultra, Bonnaroo, Coachella. And then there's kind of what's known, I think, as the more transformational festival events, which are Burning Man, Lightning in a Bottle.
Vision.
Actually, yeah, Envision. And then there are these kind of like middle ground festivals that are some combination of both. And I actually, Lightning in a Bottle, I think, is a solid middle ground, though it does lean more toward the transformational side with its ethos, and there are a lot of workshops, and the programming is about much more than just music. And I've been to a lot of all of those kinds, and personally, I tend to have a better experience when the general ethos of a festival is about more than music, and it's about there are encouragements to focus on personal development, personal wellness, planetary wellness, community, and growth in different aspects. There's a festival in Nashville called Deep Tropics, which is kind of also bridging that gap to. They have a big focus on like planetary wellness, and the way that they run their festival is really clean, and they have amazing lineups every year, which is awesome. And Lighting in a Bottle and the workshops that they bring and the experiences beyond the music just add so much to the experience, and I think people walk away really tangibly changed from an experience like that. Because yeah, you still go to, you know, Hard Summer or Coachella or any of these other bigger festivals that are so music focused, and they're definitely focused on community for sure, but their primary focus is on the music and the experience you get from the music. Whereas a Lightning in a Bottle or Burning Man have these core tenets and principles, and you can walk away with a different type of change. Again, neither is better or worse. It's just about, you know, what you're into. So yeah, I've found that I've walked away from every festival having learned something new about myself or my path creatively, personally, professionally. And yeah, it's been a cool experience to kind of dip in and out of all these different types of festivals and see what they offer, see what they bring, and see how people are changed after the experience. Would you ever go to a festival like that outside of the Burning Man space?
I would love to. Lightning in the Bottle's called to me, and Vision Fest is called to me. Like, yeah, I mean, I love that environment. It just has never
Cool.
been a priority. I think it'd be really interesting to get your perspective, just because, you know, as people are listening to this, we have a broad spectrum of people. Some are like very, very experienced psychonauts and they've been to all the things, and other people are like just, you know, emerging and exploring. But for someone, if they were to go to one of these like festivals or experiences, Burning Man or you know, Lightning in the Bottle or in the other ones, I would love for you to share your psychedelic protocols, like what you would recommend of do's and don'ts for a festival experience on psychedelics, you know? And and I really want to emphasize this because we're like massive advocates of intentional sacred use of psychedelics. That's what our whole platform is, like the really intentional, sacred, ceremonial use of psychedelics for expanding our consciousness. And I also think that doing it in an experience like that is sacred. You know, it's like really, really important thing. As long as there's intentionality around it, and as long as you're aware of the set and setting, and as long as you're responsible, I think the playfulness is just as sacred as the deep internal trauma healing if you're in an ayahuasca journey. So
Totally.
I don't actually think that inherently ayahuasca heals you any more than LSD can in the right situation with the right like space. So I would love to hear
Totally.
the do's and don'ts of festival usage of enhanced psychedelics.
Thank you. Well, as the reigning all-knowing truth teller on all things psychedelics and the absolute utmost authority on all things drugs, I thank you for the question. I think approached in the right mindset and with the right intentions, a festival experience is a ceremony experience. A music festival is a ceremony, and navigating that experience with psychedelics has been like just so fulfilling in my experiences. Also, I have plenty of friends that go to these festivals completely sober the entire time and have an incredible time, so it's totally not necessary. And I would never just blatantly say do psychedelics and go to a festival. First and foremost, I preach research and talking to people close to you if you've never had an experience like that. And I would neither condemn nor condone diving in brand new to a festival with psychedelics. I would just say do a little research and know yourself before you do. LSD to me is like, I mean, first and foremost, I think the people you're with is going to have a big impact. Prior to even talking about substances, the people that you go with, the people that you're around, do you have somebody that's a little too controlling? Do you guys need to kind of set some boundaries? Do you have other people that are kind of abusive with different substances and might not be entering that space with the right state of mind? Do you have others that are pressuring? Like, make sure. I heavily encourage vetting your own crew, and being in the right group of folks as best you can. It's unpredictable what's going to happen, but best you can. And then, yeah, as far as like do's and don'ts, don't take more acid after only an hour. I think we've learned that.
And I also just like sometimes people like even just like knowing how much to take, like there's a lot of energy. So
again, it amplifies everything.
For me, like half a tab is more than enough to like set me up to like have like an expanded energy. If I do more than a tab, it's a lot,
Yeah,
so,
totally.
So just small amount and give it some time.
Yeah, for those who are going to or feel like it's right for them, easing into the night is always kind of the best move. You can ramp your way up to a full send, but maybe don't jump off the high dive right away, because like we said before, you can always do less, or you can always do more, but you cannot do less. So that's important. Water. I don't think anybody drinks enough water at all, with or without psychedelics, but especially if you're using different substances in that type of experience. Water with electrolytes, be mindful and respect your body. And yeah, you alluded to it before, with a thought toward how people can sometimes be a bit controlling over the experience. I think allowing whatever's happening and accepting it as what you need is a really cool tool, because even if you start feeling panicky or you get a little like disassociation or you start feeling like weird energy from the music over at that stage over there, and you feel like everybody's looking at you from behind their scarves and hoods, remember that this experience is going to give you what you needed at the end of it, and that you're not going to be stuck in this frame of mind for very long. It's a couple hours at most, but it's a real practice in patience when you're in the experience and it's not going the way you had hoped. That's a time to remind yourself that you entered with intentions, not expectations. And you can also remind yourself about the level of trust that you need to turn that unpredictable experience into a positive experience by the end, instead of looking at it as a bad trip. I'm a big fan of the thought that there is no bad trip, because even if you end up totally losing your shit and freaking out and going crazy, hopefully you're in a space where folks can help, and then you can learn from that experience and integrate whatever lessons you got from that experience. Maybe you're trying to control things a little too much. Maybe you took too much. And there's also an argument that says, is there such a thing as too much, or did you take what you needed and you got what you needed? And a lot of people like to play around in that quagmire of a question. But yeah, I think those are my biggest do's and don'ts. Aubrey talked at Burning Man last year, and he gave like a recipe list for what he does at festivals. Hilarious. And people were just asking him questions about, well, what about if you do this much Molly with this much ketamine and blah, blah, blah. And he was like a chef just whipping up his recipes. I don't know that I'm advanced enough on my psychonaut journey or in a position to recommend anything like that. But if somebody is going to work with different substances in the festival space, I think it does have the potential to be incredibly fulfilling and joyous and creative and silly and fun and connective and inspiring for growth and change in many ways, as long as it's done with mindfulness. And those mindfulness practices of pacing yourself, being with the right people, being in the right headspace, and drinking fucking water with electrolytes are all mindful practices that I believe can very much fuel an incredible experience.
Dude, I love that so much. It's fun that this conversation has guided us towards like talking about this, shared passion of ours. I think that's amazing. And I look forward to more conversations. We're going to definitely have you back and
cool.
dig deeper, and just really excited to just be an ally for you and ally for you in the work that you're doing. And so excited about the movie that you're going to be producing. And
thank you, brother. Thank you, man.
Excited to bring our tribe to support you with that. So
cool.
So for those that are listening right now, Brent has very funny, always entertaining and deeply insightful content on Instagram and on social media. What's the best way for them to follow you?
Yeah, Instagram's best. It's just at Brent Pella. YouTube is the same, Brent Pella. TikTok, Brent Pella. Also, sign up for my email list, because a lot of fun announcements about the movie and live shows and tour dates coming at you on the email list. That's brentpella.com. There's a little pop-up. Just enter your info there, and I promise I won't spam you.
Thank you guys so much. So excited for the upcoming journey that we have. So join us back here again at Psychedelic, Sex, and the Superconscious. Until then, just remember, this is your life, so make it legendary.
Thank you, legendary explorers, for joining us on this cosmic journey today.
Your curiosity fuels our exploration of psychedelics, sex, and the superconscious.
If you're hungry for more, dive into our website and connect with us on social media. All the links are in the show notes.
And stay tuned for our next mind-expanding episode. We can't wait to talk to you again in our next adventure.
Until then, remember, this is your life. So,
make it legendary.